Matthew Tkachuk undergoes surgery and will reunite with a childhood friend this season. All this and more on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, August 25th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MoneyMan12. Follow the show account anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Shout out to everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix and 2 to 4 times a week during the off season. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. And this is a big one for today's show, as it was a Friday news dump with the news of Matthew Tkachuk undergoing the surgery for his lower body injury that he suffered at the Four Nations. We're going to discuss all of that. We're going to discuss also the Panthers signing Luke Kunin, forward Luke Kunin, former first-round pick, to a one-year deal. And also, third segment, we are going to discuss the Panthers and not being complacent and what it does for as far as the roster competition come training camp. I mean, if we have time at the end, we will discuss the AMERIGOL LATAM Cup, which just wrapped up this week. But yes, the biggest news of the day for today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast is something that we've been anticipating now for a while, ever since February. It's crazy to think that it's been 6 months since Matthew Tkachuk went through the injury in the USA's round robin matchup against Team Canada in the Four Nations, where right at the puck dropping the gloves with Brandon Hagel with the fight, and then a close game for the USA against against Canada. And then Matthew Tkachuk not able to give it a go for the rest of that game. Missed out on the final game between USA and Finland. Tried giving it a go once again against Canada and was told the coaching staff that he couldn't go. Missed the last 25 games of the season and return for the Panthers in the postseason, where he played 12 minutes a night at the start of the postseason, got to get and then ramped things up more, played a big role into the Panthers winning their second straight Stanley Cup, and even got the game-winning goal in Game 6 against the Edmonton Oilers. But this was reported by David Pagnotta of the fourth period shortly after the Panthers made a signing, which we will discuss that in segment number 2, for the injury that he suffered, which was tearing the adductor off the bone and then suffering a sports hernia injury for this. And also, we discussed a few weeks ago about Matthew Tkachuk contemplating his options, not being unsure about whether he should go through with the surgery to begin with. And like I said a few weeks ago, I'm not in a position to tell somebody what they should or shouldn't do with their bodies, but just want to discuss the various options of what could happen if he were to go through with it versus if he didn't go through with it. Now that he has gone through with it, the reporting and the speculation is that he's probably going to be back in the lineup by around January, maybe around the Winter Classic. Maybe he will try to give it a go as his first game back when the Panthers do face off against the New York Rangers on January 2nd, 2026. But if he had decided not to go through with the surgery, he's going to go through a lot of pain. I mean, we saw even throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs that the only time he would take the ice would be for an actual game setting. Didn't participate in practice, didn't participate in morning skates neither, and would just dress for the action for the playoff games. And this for me, if I'm in the position of Matthew Tkachuk, I'm thinking, do I really want to go through that mental struggle over and over again? And he even spoke about it during his interview with Darren Pang after the Panthers won their second cup, saying, "Oh, I got to thank my family for being patient with me all throughout this. Thank my fiance as well." So, and does he want to go through that in the season and just and deal with all of that? I mean, the Panthers made the moves that they made for when re-signing the guys and then being over the cap, which right now their total cap is at $100 million, 4.5 million over the cap, which we'll discuss more of the details a little bit later. So he was going to miss time regardless. And this was something that we knew from even at the start of the playoffs. Okay, he's going to play. He's going to miss some time come next season. And an absolute warrior for Matthew Tkachuk to even do this to begin with. And the delay, it's more than just the whole getting married, going on his honeymoon in France, and then going through the EA cover athlete portion of everything. It's the fact that you have to do all that along with trying to get 1, 2, possibly a handful of opinions to see how long that he was going to be out. And Pragnota of the fourth period discussed that the surgery happened weeks ago. So there's going to be a bit of the delay when it comes to reporting on when the public knows versus when it actually happens. It's funny because this is something that Kirby Lupul of the Cats and Rats podcast even tweeted about to Jim Behringer of Full Press Hockey when discussing about it as well. So that the public wasn't going to know very soon after the events happened. So the goal remains the same. The 2026 Winter Olympics. He has 2 Stanley Cups, but when you really think about it, about the goal for multiple players in various sports, you see it in soccer, you see it in basketball even, and that includes hockey. Now that he's gotten the glory of the Stanley Cup multiple times, there's really one thing left on his Hall of Fame. I'm very confident in saying his Hall of Fame resume, and it's to win gold at the Winter Olympics. It's been a long time since the USA has been able to call themselves champions at the Winter Olympic Games since 1980. And I mean, listen, this is a very important operation for him, and a very important time for the Florida Panthers when it comes to trying to keep everyone as well. When you consider the offseason that the Panthers have of being champions, and to think that for keeping everyone around, it's just why not go through the surgery when you zoom out and look at it from a bird's eye view of all of this. So we hope that Matthew Tkachuk has a speedy recovery. And also shortly after that report of from David Pragnota of the fourth period, we saw a picture of Dmitry Kulikov and his day with the cup. And Matthew Tkachuk is already on the crutches. He has some type of and there wasn't any video of any sorts, so we can't really see if there is a noticeable limp there. But now it's public based on that, and also with the timing of everything. Maybe Pragnota decide to ask around things after a signing of a Panther, which we'll get into the second segment. Maybe that's really. I mean, whenever it comes to reporting and the messages that get to these national reporters before they tweet it out publicly, it's strategic. It's all that comes with the timing. So, and they knew, and also Tkachuk knew that when Kulikov when he took the pictures with Dmitry Kulikov with his day with the cup, that it was going to become public. So might as well get it ahead of time and the messaging to one of the national reporters for us to know about it, and also discuss this on multiple platforms, including here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where a friend of Matthew Tkachuk has signed with the Florida Panthers, and maybe that person might have had to do a little bit with getting Matthew Tkachuk to the Florida Panthers to begin with. What is that signing? We'll discuss all that and more on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And college football is back. And honestly, there's nothing better than the energy of the tailgates being in the stands with your fellow fans. The only downside, trying to get tickets. Endless queues, hidden fees, and prices that jump at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives you an advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the right price with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. And some of there's a few college football games. There's one just coming up in the South Florida area next Sunday where the Miami Hurricanes will be facing off against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish next Sunday at Hard Rock Stadium. So Game Time is the best place to get your tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday. And we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer the questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. So it's funny because when it comes to running the show here on the podcast and discussing all the topics today we went in a little bit of reverse order because the topic of importance is the fact that Matthew Tkachuk went under the knife and went through with the surgery for his lower body injury, the abductor off the bone and the sports hernia. And also, but before that was the signing of forward Luke Kunin, a former first-round pick from the Minnesota Wild back in the 2016 draft, the same draft that Matthew Tkachuk was in, same the Austin Matthews draft that they were all in. But here's the thing: Matthew Tkachuk and Luke Kunin grew up together in St. Louis. So Matthew Tkachuk being born in Scottsdale, Arizona, then moving to St. Louis after Keith Tkachuk went from playing with the Coyotes to the St. Louis Blues, spent most of his childhood there. Luke Kunin played with the Junior Blues, and that's where also Matthew Tkachuk spent a majority of his life playing at Chamadad High School there as well. Obviously, the same high school that we've spoken about so many times on the podcast with Jason Tatum as well. So St. Louis is a little bit of a hotbed when it comes to professional athletes coming out of there. So Luke Kunin is another one of those signings. So the signing for the Panthers, bringing in Luke Kunin, was a 1-year, $75,000 contract. So deal, which this was the only number that the Panthers were able to work out here. And we'll get into the cap numbers later based on what was going to be fitting into the roster. So Luke Kunin has been a player that after his entry-level deal with the Minnesota Wild has signed two different two-year deals, just over $2 million, signed another 1-year deal with the San Jose Sharks. So signed another 2-year deal, took him to his RFA years in Nashville, then signed another 2-year deal with the San Jose Sharks. Was still going to be an RFA at the end of the second 2-year deal, and then one more that took him to his UFA year. Then traded to the Columbus Blue Jackets, where he finished his most previous season, playing under Dean Evison twice in his career. So this is a guy who's definitely been liked in one stop, and Dean Evison wanted to bring him back again. And also with Luke Kunin, he's also a guy who is a leader on the ice as well, as he has worn the C in the NTDP, where he's also played once again with Matthew Tkachuk. They did not play in junior hockey / college together, as Luke Kunin went to the University of Wisconsin, and they didn't play in the same World Junior team neither. Luke Kunin was also the captain of the 2016-2017 World Junior team for Team USA, where there's a few former Panthers on that team, and Colin White and Casey Fitzgerald on the team. But with Luke Kunin coming into the mix, 434 games played, just under 143 points in his career, but over 860 hits. So does bring the physicality. He is a high floor type of player. Although when he was drafted, he was expected to be a top six player with the Minnesota Wild. has still fared a good career for himself. So that's another great thing about Luke Kunin, is still that he is a serviceable player. And for the Panthers and their situation here, probably looked around the NHL to see if he could make similarly to what he was making. And honestly, when you're almost a 10-year vet, and in the case of Kunin, either you're going to be snatched immediately by certain teams when you become a UFA, or guys are going to be waiting out and seeing the tail end of camp, which right now this is PTO season. The St. Louis Blues did sign Milan Lucic to a PTO. September 1st is coming, which means Carey Price's bonuses will be his signing bonus will be paid, and then likely his LTIR space will be traded, which possibly will make the Montreal Canadiens possibly sign someone like a Jack Roslovic, who's still out there. So this is kind of the beginning of that middle class players who are kind of starting to hit their UFA years. This is the kind of time that they are starting to sign with teams. So the quiet part of the offseason just got a little noisier, as we are just a few days away from September. But we mentioned about Matthew Tkachuk and him growing up with Chucky throughout his years, but it's also a reunion with Panthers general manager and president of hockey operations, Bill Zito. We've talked about a few times on the show about how he's represented former Panthers like Tim Thomas, Anthony Niemi, but also what another person that Bill Zito represented during his time as an agent right before becoming part of the Columbus Blue Jackets front office is the fact that he was Luke Kunin's agent. And in an interview with Sportsnet, when they were discussing about the trade for Matthew Tkachuk, he spoke in detail about when he was an agent for Kunin and the fact of getting a little bit of intel about his character and who he is and how great of a teammate he is. I'm not saying that Luke Kunin is necessarily responsible for Bill Zito making the trade. Bill Zito deserves all the credit. He's the one who made the phone calls. He's the one who made the offers, and he and Brad Treliving were the ones who agreed to bring Matthew Tkachuk to the Florida Panthers on that special day, July 22nd of 2022. For the Panthers. That is a very impactful day in franchise history. But the fact is, the relationships that you build throughout this industry is so important. I mean, yeah, we mentioned the relationships of Paul Maurice and someone like a Nate Schmidt, but then you think about, once again, Bill Zito having the relationships with Seth Jones, Sergei Bobrovsky, Kevin Stenlund, and then now a very impactful relationship that he had with Luke Kunin. It was very impactful for bringing Matthew Tkachuk into the mix, and then now reuniting with Kunin here with the Florida Panthers here. So when it comes to Luke Kunin, career-wise, averages just under 15 minutes of ice time per night. So, and the thing is, the fact that they're for the Panthers is like we mentioned earlier, is the fact that he is a high floor type of player. He scored double-digit goals six times in his career, which kind of elevates kind of the depth for the Panthers. This is like, you're looking for a guy like Ryan Lomberg, but with a higher ceiling, and which I wouldn't say that Luke Kunin has a high ceiling to begin with for the Panthers, but based on the fact that he's been in the lineup, hasn't been out of the league, and the fact that he's coming to a Stanley Cup champion on a team that is on a mission to trying to become the first team to three-peat in more than 40 years. I mean, these are once again the type of bargain signings that you are looking for. And three seasons where he's had 100+ shots as well in his career. I'm not expecting Kunin to put 100 shots in a season under the Florida Panthers. I wouldn't even expect them to play more than 60 games for the Panthers. So we'll see where he goes there. But the Panthers now at this moment, they have their 23 guys, exclude Matthew Tkachuk. This is who they are going with, because when you look at the Panthers Puckpedia page and who the Panthers were going to possibly be part of this roster with Matthew Tkachuk's LTIR money coming off the books, 9.5. Panthers could afford to have a full 23 of 14 forwards and 7 defensemen and 2 goalies. So you're looking at the players for the Panthers who have to be right once again at that 775K mark, which has been kind of like a little bit of a magic number for Bill Zito on what he's been looking for on how to move guys up and down and even to possibly put guys on waivers, because some of the guys that included were possibly going to be part of this mix were guys like Mackenzie Entwistle, Wilmer Skoog, Jack Stanicka, Nolan Foote. Those are all the guys who are not waivers exempt who make 775K or more. So you think of, and those are the one-way. Those are the one-way. Not the one-way deals, but the waivers exempt deals. The rest of the guys, they could possibly afford to bring people into the mix that you could send down. But this is also about trying to get someone like a Jack Devine, Grayson Sachin, Hunter St. Martin, all the seasoning that they could in Charlotte. So have your 14 forwards and then deal with the cap implications later when it comes to that. And like we've said so many times, you just never know what kind of injuries are going to happen throughout the season. So instead of giving yourself a little bit of a headache on sending guys down, you know that if Matthew Tkachuk is healthy enough to come back, you'll just have to make those trades of one of Evan Rodriguez or Eetu Luostarinen, along with Jesper Boquist, because those are the numbers that make sense for the Panthers. The maths here in this case, and the Panthers, when they make those trades, they will be exactly at zero. For when it comes to salary cap space, and the roster will be at 22, and they'll be going with the 13 forwards and 7 defensemen and 2 goalies. Right now, they're able to get 23. They'll be able to get all the way down to 2022, and like I said, right at zero. So Bill Zito, once again, doing a great job. And there's a reason why The Athletic once again puts the Florida Panthers front office as far as confidence rankings, numero uno. So we will actually discuss more of that and what the Panthers' lack of complacency does with this signing of Luke Kunin. We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Monday, August 25th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday. Funny enough, I told you guys when we last spoke on Friday that, hey, I'm on the road. I won't be back until Monday afternoon. We'll do a Tuesday show. But with this news of Matthew Tkachuk going through with the surgery, I could not wait until Tuesday to bring you guys a show. So still on the road and bringing you guys still this very important show here, a very important show in August, which is the great thing, and continuing the conversation here when it comes to the champions. And champions aren't complacent, which is once again why we love what this front office consistently does. And like I mentioned and teased at the end of the last segment, the front office confidence rankings for the Panthers, the band is back together, three new guys, which is a rarity for it to be that low for a champion, for it to only be 3 and it's guys who are, it's a backup goaltender, a 7 defenseman, and a 13th forward. It's literally fill-in pieces for the Panthers. And who knows? Like I said, Kunin is a high floor player, which with AJ Greer, he had a career high in games. Jonah Gadjovich was 2 games away from a career high in games played. He had 43 when he was with the San Jose Sharks. Jonah Gadjovich played 42 this year for the Panthers. So, and Danil Tarasov, he's going to get at least 30 games for the Panthers, and also a new situation for him as the Columbus Blue Jackets are going with the Jet Greaves, Elvis Merzlikins combo there. And like I mentioned, I didn't mention even Tarasov in the previous segment of guys that Bill Zito were familiar with And by the way, the Panthers announced that the jersey numbers for the new guys coming in, Jeff Petrie will wear number 2, Daniil Tarasov will wear number 40, and then Luke Kunin will wear number 71. But if opening night were tonight, you're looking at a top line for the Panthers and a third line that is for the most part set. And with Matthew Tkachuk likely sidelined until January and the signing of Luke Kunin, you're looking at competition everywhere for this team. In the case of Mackie Samoskevich, who almost scored 20 goals last season in his first full season with the Panthers, if there is a time during the regular season where, you might need to give him a night off, you could put Luke Kunin in that spot on the right wing for that second line, along with Sam Bennett and Evan Rodriguez or Carter Verhaeghe. You could flip-flop those two at the top line. So that is basically for the most part set. And then, the fourth line entirely is coming back. But like I mentioned earlier, it's with Luke Kunin scoring double-digit goals 6 times in his career and also having over 800 hits in his career. So he averages almost 2 hits a game throughout his almost 10 years. So that is something that is going to be important for the Panthers here on just how they separate the puck, keep the possession, and roll their 4 lines all throughout. So that this is why, once again, it wasn't a signing that I was necessarily expecting, because I would think that a team with more space would possibly give them a little bit more, maybe a 1-year deal at $3 million. And I mean, for rebuilding teams like San Jose, Chicago, but Luke Kunin, he wants to win a cup. I mean, I can't wait to hear what he has to say when he does speak publicly. I remember there was a quote from Nate Schmidt saying, "I have the money. I want to win." Luke Kunin hasn't necessarily made a lot. His career earnings are very low, but I just want to see what he has to say. And I also want to see what he has to say just about his relationships with Bill Zito and Matthew Tkachuk, and just what those conversations were like of just trying to convince them to be with this team and trying to go for history, which is very exciting. I'm very excited for what is to come. And listen, like I said, no complacency. This could be an opportunity where it didn't matter whether that whole entire fourth line came into game 3 of the second round series against the Toronto Maple Leafs and really shifted the momentum for the Panthers, which, funny enough, Anton Lundell recently on 32 Thoughts spoke about that moment and just how much of a game changer that was, getting that goal. They were down 3-1, and then the Panthers pressing the gas after. So that's another thing for that fourth line was a difference, but you just night in and night out, those guys also have to fight to try to keep their spot as well. So listen, I just remember one quote from AJ Greer from the neutral site game in Orlando, just discussing about how training camp is a war and just how nothing is guaranteed. And I feel that someone like him is going to continue with that mindset, because all 3 of the guys currently on the fourth line are in contract years. So there's no relaxing if you're those guys, even if you're coming off a Stanley Cup championship. But let's wrap up this show with talking about the AMERIGOL LATAM Cup, which just wrapped up this past weekend at the Panthers Ice Den in Coral Springs. And the biggest standout team federation in this LATAM Cup was Team Greece, with 3 championships throughout this tournament at the D1, D2, and women's D1 level. And their Division D1 team finally breaking through with 3 straight finals appearances, and then finally capturing it this year with defeating Argentina in the D1 final. Their Division 2 team, it took 7 overtimes to capture their championship against Chile just recently. So that's another incredible story for Team Greece there. And also another connection, and also the amount of opportunities certain people got to cover the event. Andrew Imbert, PA announcer for the Florida Panthers, did some play-by-play for the LATAM Cup. Octavio Sequeira, former Panthers Spanish play-by-play voice, also got to be part of the call and discussed everything of perspective on the tournament, and also his son, David, who, if you guys are everydayers, the last time Octavio was on the show was maybe like 3 years ago. We discussed the Panthers playoff series. We discussed how David's start in playing hockey at Kendall Ice Arena, which is my home rink. I used to live like less than 3 minutes from that rink, about how he got his start at Kendall Ice Arena there. And also the fact that he played for Team Venezuela in this most recent tournament, and also them getting the 16U championship in double overtime as well. So I want to say a public congratulations to David and former Panthers Spanish play-by-play voice Octavio Sequeira on the championship. And I'm sure it's a proud dad moment for him. So hashtag tómalo. So that's for you, Octavio, if you happen to be listening. But also some representation there for Team Cuba, as former baseball star Yasiel Puig waving the Cuban flag, and also the pots and pans banging at the Panthers Ice Den. Obviously, we spoke about championships and the Florida Panthers and them, and a lot of the Latinos participating in South Florida culture, and then adding that to hockey. It's just so big for the growth of the game. And also Peru making their debut in the tournament. Puck Empire just recently posted a photo of a donation that the person who runs that account got, and has now 10 international jerseys from multiple tournaments. So that's also really cool. But Erica Ayala of Locked On Kraken and of the Women's Hockey Report here on the Locked On NHL channel posted a video of the women's First Nation team burning some sage prior to their to one of their games, and bringing the good vibes, trying to put some relaxation prior to their matchup, and calming the nerves. As someone who likes to burn sage on occasion, it's something that is really impactful and great for the mind and spirit here. But want to say once again, congratulations to all the teams who participated. Also, the Panthers Warriors team, who has done multiple games across the Ice Den, some alumni events. They were also a big participant in the AMERIGOL LATAM Cup, as they were in the Division 2 part of the bracket and in during the tournament. So shout out to all the teams, as once again it was a major success. And once again, if you couldn't make it, like myself, I hope that myself and also you guys get an opportunity to attend the event come next year, which is likely once again going to be hosted in South Florida. They've also expanded the AMERIGOL LATAM Cup in a different location as well, in Vegas. So 2 different tournaments that AMERIGOL has also put together. So it's the game is growing. We've seen it with the Panthers winning the Stanley Cup, and also some international play at the lower levels. So just once again, I wanted to highlight how big this is when it comes to the growth of the game, and we will be discussing it, at least the wrap up of it, every single year as long as I'm the host here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the show. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. We'll be back with you guys on Wednesday, where we will discuss more of the things around the Florida Panthers, including the Stanley Cup making a visit to the happiest place on earth. Yes, make sure to come back then, as we will discuss that and more here on the show. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.